after we get started, but let's go ahead and kick this off. I'm really excited about today's webinar. We have Shamla Priyaga, who is going to be talking to us about designing a voice user interface, which is actually an area that I've grown increasingly interested in. So I'm really keen to hear about her work and about sort of the do's and don'ts of VUI UX. So just a few words about our speaker today. Shamla is a seasoned conversational AI expert. She's a senior software project manager in conversational AI and deep learning with NVIDIA. She's led initiatives across connected home, automotive, wearables, just to name a few. She's put her work and her research into usability, accessibility, speech recognition, multimodal voice user interfaces, and she's even been published internationally in publications like Forbes. Outside of her research, she spent the last 18 years designing mobile, web, desktop, and smart TV interfaces, and she's most recently joined NVIDIA to on their roadmap for speech AI tools. So this webinar, as all of our webinars, will be recorded. It is being recorded, and so if you miss something, you have a couple of options. You can put your question in the general chat. You can post a more personal question or one that you don't want to share with everyone using the Q&A tool, or you can simply go back and watch the video on the uxpa.org website at another time. So Shamla, welcome, and without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
So much. So yeah, let me share my screen. All right. Let me know if you are able to see it or not.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Shamla Prayaga, and I am the Senior Product Manager at NVIDIA leading the Speech AI software solution. I'm also the founder of the Digital Assistant Academy, where we train and certify people on conversational AI and voice user interface. This being a new field, and it's growing pretty quickly. I identified this as a gap, and that's why I started the Digital Assistant Academy. I'm also the author of two books. One of them is my memoir, Close Calls, and the other one is The Emotionally Engaged Digital Assistant. It talks about how we can humanize the speech technology, given that it's picking up so fast. There are so many issues going on with the speech. It does not understand the accents and it speaks very robotic and things like that. How we can humanize, leveraging the human-centered design approach for the technology and the design itself, which will be launched this month. Outside of work, I have a son. He's 11 years old, and I love gardening a lot. So this is all of the produces from my garden. And just to tell you, this is a hydroponic garden, which means completely grown with water, which I'm very passionate about. So let's get started. So not very long ago, we actually dreamed of having a virtual assistant or an assistant which we can speak with, and we have seen this concept in so many movies. We have seen this in different shapes and forms as a fiction, I would say. But then thanks to the technology, now we are able to see products like Alexa, Google, and all these speech related products, which has become part of our life. And many people I know are using not just smart speakers, but they are also using speech for dictation on their phone and many other use cases, which we will talk about. Now, it has grown beyond the smart speaker and also the phones, and you will see speech in the car, you would see in appliances and kiosks, also robotics, and also metahuman, which is picking up pretty quickly nowadays. And that on the right hand side is the toy Jensen, which is a metahuman of our CEO Jensen, which was completely created at NVIDIA. So let's look at the industries which are adopting speech technology. So outside of the home or virtual assistant use cases or virtual assistant, there's a lot of different industries picking up the speech AI or voice technology, e-learning being the biggest, followed by healthcare and medical. Then we see banking and finance, insurance, contact center. We're seeing a lot of government agencies also leveraging speech technology, media and entertainment. We are also seeing telecom, technology, retail, and travel hospitality. All of these different segments are adopting speech technology for a lot of interesting use cases. As you can see, customer care is becoming a very common use case where optimizing the customer care experience through voice is becoming a trend, right? For example, if you look at any call center, there is a lot of conversation which needs to happen between the user and a person, and there's a long wait time for the customer before they can get to an agent. So all of that thing adds on to time, effort and money, because there are a lot of agents on the other side and the customer has to wait, they get frustrated, the experience sucks, and all of those kind of things. And with voice, it's becoming easier for companies to start thinking about how can I optimize my entire business by having voice assistants or voice bots, which can actually take some of the common queries and only when needed, hand it off to a customer care agent. Then we are saying the conversational AI and voice bots take the smart speaker, which almost everyone is familiar with now. We're also seeing that IT support or any kind of support and enablement, they also want to use some sort of voice or chatbots in their experiences as well. And employee development and coachings, companies have started leveraging this inside and outside as well. We are seeing a lot of task enablement, optimization of tasks like turn on the fan or automation, right? Like home automation, home security automation. Similarly, we are seeing in the robotics, in the factories also some sort of task enablement completely happening through voice. We are seeing nowadays speech is also being used for transcription, call summarization, and it's a big thing, especially now that everyone is virtual. We're also seeing accessibility, which is my favorite topic. Voice is enabling more and more people, and it's enabling more and more use cases for accessibility. So I have a colleague who has cerebral palsy and is completely on wheelchair, and he talks about how speech has enabled him a lot to be more productive and proactive. So recently he had a baby, and his entire house is voice enabled in a way that he is able to through voice is able to get the crib up or down, or have fun time with the baby and all of those kind of things. And it's fascinating, like more and more such use cases are coming up. People are able to use many people are able to use technology more now, given that there are voice technology enablements. Then again, sales optimization, quality assurance, recruiting, we are also seeing these different use cases. Now, let's look at the different kind of interfaces which we know and we have been designing for. So command line interface, basically where you have a set of commands and you just have to enter those set of commands in a format which is defined by the programming language, for example, Python, or for example, C or C++ or whatever you have, or whatever the language the CLI accepts or is made for. That's what you do. So command line interface is very, very structured in the format, like you have a set of commands you have to do. You cannot do anything outside of those commands. If you do, it will not even recognize, and that means you need to remember everything. You need to remember the step and the sequence in which you have to do that. So now also CLIs exist and it's being used a lot, especially with AI and machine learning. So this is something which definitely is there, which we have been designing for decades. Then the next one we have is the graphical user interfaces. So in the graphical user interface, there's a graphic, you see visuals, you are able to interact, you have more flexibility. It's not like a linear approach, unlike CLI. Here you can interact and with the interface however you want, clicking, going back, navigating, and we have been designing GUIs for a very long time now. We have been doing that for, I don't even remember, like many years now, and they have been evolving, and the patterns and designs have been maturing. But as you can see, the GUI have two different ways. One is you can interact via the mouse clicks and via your laptops. The other kind of GUI which we are seeing is like the mobile phone applications, where you are able to tap, zoom, pinch, and do all those different kind of interactions, and which is more intuitive, more helpful for the users to interact with. And then comes the voice user interface, where the modality is voice, the input modality is voice, the output modality is voice. It may have additional modalities, and we will talk about those as well. But then in this case, basically it's all about you're speaking to a device through your voice command. It interprets what you are saying, it makes sense out of that, and then it processes it and responds back the result in voice, because the original communication mechanism was voice. Nowadays there are changes, mixed modality well, where you are able to input through voice, get output through text, or vice versa as well. And today we are going to talk about the voice user interfaces. So why even we care about voice user interface, and why is it picking up? Like, we are seeing so many use cases, but why is it picking up? So one thing is speed. It's very quick to interact with a voice-based device versus a GUI or a CLI, because the cognitive load or the understanding as much which is required to interact or use those CLI and GUI based devices is not there with voice, because first it's hands-free, and we have been speaking from day one. Like when we were born, we started speaking some words, and then that is the natural modality which comes to us. We don't have to learn anything new when we are speaking. And now the machines have become sophisticated, the technology have become sophisticated, so of course it is able to now understand what you are saying and all. So it's very natural. I don't have to learn anything new. I don't need to learn like I have to pinch, or I have to zoom, or I have to tap, or I have to do this or any of those things. It's very natural for us. And of course, you know, like it's the understanding, like voice is able to understand the responses it gives us. All of that also adds on to the benefits of why people would prefer using a voice user interface and why it is picking up. Now, where does voice user interface or VUI design fits? So VUI design, I would say, is a combination of three things. It may not always be the case that visual design is there, but in many cases, visual design is the intersection. You have the copywriting. So voice design or VUI design heavily focuses on the copy aspect of thing, like what do you write, how do you write, versus the interaction. How does the interaction work? Plus, there's a small aspect of visual design which comes there, and that basically is depending on the kind of interfaces. So let's look at the different kind of voice interfaces which we have. So there are 4 different kind of voice interfaces. One is the IVR, which is the interactive voice responses, and many of us must have at some point used the IVR systems. So what is an IVR system? You call your bank, or you call your hospital, or you call any company where there's a service orientation. So you call your bank, for example. So there is some sort of automated system which would say like, okay, for menu press 1, for FAQ press 2, or say FAQ, or for contact say 3, or say contact, or something of that sort. Now they are also becoming sophisticated, right? But that IVR system, that itself is that was the first modality which were, or the VUIs which were introduced even before Alexa or Google existed. So IVR have existed for more than 2 decades now, and they are becoming more sophisticated, given that there's a lot of more designers who are focusing on VUIs nowadays, and there's more understanding of how these systems work or should work, especially given that now we have all these voice enabled devices. So what IVR does is, it does exactly what I was talking about, like customer care optimization, where IVR systems try to negotiate with you or get all of the information from you and try to help you so that they don't have to navigate to a human, so that they can save time, effort, and money. However, in many cases, once they have optimized, they have done all of the screening and everything, if the IVR system is not able to help the user, that is when it is routed to a human who will take your call. So this is one of the modalities, or one of the VUI types which we design for. And there are a lot of people who are in this industry now whose background is from IVR. Now, the second kind of things we all are familiar with is the smart speakers or voice assistants. Alexa, Google, Siri, you have Samsung, and a lot of many more voice assistants in the car, at your home, which you interact with. So these smart speaker voice assistants, basically you give them a command, they will reply back to you. They will do things for you, playing music, or giving you directions, giving you recipes, and all types of things. If you look at this modality or this type of VUIs, they are completely speaker based, or they have limited ways to express themselves. For example, in this, there is nothing I can see. All I can do is speak with the device. That's it. How do I design for a system where there is no modality, in the sense that I cannot see visually what's happening? And there are a lot of smart speakers. There are a lot of smart speakers which still exist and we design for, right? Because it gives you the benefit of hands-free, eyes-free, and optimizes the experience for the user. Now, the third type of VUI is the voice command devices. So voice command devices basically are the devices like your voice in the appliances or a specific device which does only certain things. So for example, a refrigerator voice assistant would have a screen or would have voice, but all it is doing is giving you commands or helping you with the command and control of that specific thing. For example, in this case, it will give you information about what's inside my fridge, or I can change the temperature of the fridge and things like that. But not more than that. So there's like ovens, there are refrigerators, there are dishwashers, washing machines. They all have voice nowadays to help you, but they are specific to a command and control approach. Then the fourth one, which is now picking up, and especially with the metaverse future, which we are talking about, we are seeing MetaHuman, which is like a AI avatar, right? So in this, there is mixed modalities. There is a screen, there is a voice, and there is a human also. There's like visuals as well, or there's more to it. Like in this case, when I'm speaking, there's something shown on the screen, but also there are expressions, emotions, which has to map up. So it's not just like listening and speaking and speaking and listening, but it has more than that. When you talk about the multimodal interactions, there are gestures, there are expressions, there's emotions, and there is more things, like more affordances as compared to the other modalities which you see. Like you have limited ways to express the modalities in a smart speaker or an IVR system. Maybe with the appliances or the command-based voice, you have a little bit of flexibility to provide more affordances and more ways of giving information and feedback. But here you have like fully expressive. It can do everything. It can talk like a human being. It can act like a human being, have the same expressions, have the same kind of understanding and everything. So this is what multimodal is. Now in the multimodal, there's a mixed thing. Multimodal could also mean like you have a screen and you have a voice, or it could mean like you have a screen, voice, and the gestures and the computer vision and everything together in there as well. Now let's look at the challenges of designing for voice. It's very exciting space, and definitely voice is picking up. So when I started in this space, I was like, yes, I'm going to design voice applications. But then as a designer, there are things to consider when designing for voice. One of the thing is speech is very one-dimensional, which means one person has to speak, the other has to respond. It's always like that. It's like very, very one-dimensional. It cannot be like all over the place. It has to be very structured. The second is speech is invisible. As you can see, smart speakers, IVRs, you cannot see what's happening. So it's very hard for you to visualize what's happening. It's hard to see what you are able to do. It's like a box which is able to do anything for you, but you do not know. Like for example, in a GUI, when I go, I know like, yes, okay, I can select a certain product, add it into the cart, and I can check out. I know exactly the flow. So there's some mapping there. But when it is invisible, it becomes very challenging. Like, how do I design? How do I think about the interaction? Then speech is transient, very short term memory, very short term memory. Uh, so it will not remember everything, because the way speech works, right? It's how does the speech recognition system work to start with? There is a bunch of technologies working together to make this work. There is a speech recognition technology which we call speech to text or automated speech recognition technology. There is natural language processing or natural language understanding, which understands what you are saying. And then there is text to speech, which actually converts the text into audio format. So there are multiple technologies. There's dialogue management. The architectural side of how this is enabled is very complicated. But for the user, it doesn't matter, right? So speech is very, very, I would say, like short term in certain sense of memory. And also for the user, it's the same. If you give me a lot of information at once, like I'm doing now, you may not remember everything. You will just remember part of it, right? The same thing happens. If I say, find me a nearby restaurant, and the voice assistant found like 10 different restaurants, and it is like, okay, here are 10 restaurants I found. The first one is blah, 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 and it keeps talking. You may forget by the time it gives you the 10th restaurant, what was the first one. Whereas in a GUI, you can go back and look at, you have that back and forth flexibility, So some of the Don Norman's heuristic principles does not apply here. But we need to still make sure that somehow we need to give users that flexibility. How do we do that? So that's the kind of challenges we get when we are designing. Then it is asymmetric. When we are talking, we are not talking in a very sequential manner. We go from one place to the other to the other. So it's always like all over the place, because that's how our brain works. So we just try to speak how our brain is working, right? So how do you design keeping all of those kind of interactions in mind? Like people can come and talk about anything. Do you have a support system for that? Do you have a strategy for that? Or would you just make the assistant or voice application to sound dumb, saying, sorry, I do not understand? So how are you thinking of all of those things? So interaction, as you can see in this entire piece, interaction design is so important, thinking about every aspect of interaction. Now, the last two which you see is not on the designer to think about, but it's more on the technology side. The speech synthesis quality, right? Like speech synthesis is the text to speech, which is the audio returned back to you. Again, it is I would say, cloned voice, or it is a robotic voice, which is being tuned to make it sound like human. But still it has some robotic aspect to it, which we cannot control. And nowadays, text to speech technology has matured enough that we are able to now make it sound more emotive, more human. So that thing is on the technology. And the speech recognition performance itself, right? Like speech recognition works perfectly fine when you are in the silent room with no noise talking to an assistant. But the moment you have yelling kids, you have something going on in the background, a lot of noise, these assistants will not understand half of the things, or they don't understand the accents, or they don't understand some of the pronunciations and things like that, which is being worked on. Technology is again maturing, right? But those are the challenges again which have to be thought through. Like if this happens, how do you design? How do you think about the interaction? What do you tell the user? All of those things. So it becomes important as a designer to know these challenges so that we can design for it. Now there are two very important elements in VUI design. One of them is the dialog strategy. Like how do you communicate? What's the dialogue between the user and the bot or the machine? And the second is the system response design itself. So let's look into both of them. So the system response is basically like, how does the system respond? So what are the different kind of response strategy you would have, like a screen or an earcon, or the copy itself? Like how do you want to think about all of those? So First thing in the dialogue strategy is there are a lot of different kind of use cases which we spoke about, and based on the use cases there may be different kind of dialogues which you may have to initiate between the machine and the user. So let's say the form filling, right? The intent is we want to gather as much information from the user as possible, but how do we collect that structured information from the user, right? What do we do? So in this case, let's take an example. The user said, what is the weather? Now, you ask me weather. I don't know which location you are asking me weather about. What should I tell you? How should the dialogue continue, right? The user is assuming you already have my location information, but maybe you have turned off your location information. The voice assistant doesn't even have that information. How does that happen? If the information is available, how does the conversation happen? If the information is not available, how does the conversation happen? So when the user said, what is the weather? If you do not have weather information, you may have to do a further conversation like a human being, like for which location you want weather information, right? Or confirm with the user, like, is it for California, Lathrop? If you have location information. So you have to think about all of those different kind of strategies in the form filling, like novice user or returning user, and how are you doing that conversation. So technically it's like the script writing kind of thing, where you are thinking about the script but not just in one form, going back to it's not linear, it is asymmetric, thinking about all the different ways you can collect the information. Sometimes the user may say, like, while during the conversation the user can come back and say something which is completely out of the context. How do you think about bringing them back without just shutting them off? So that's what is form filling. Then there's menu hierarchy. Now, guiding the user to the information of interest. So let me give you an example. So we had this voice assistant in the car, and the voice assistant would say, hello, how can I help you? Now, we saw a lot of drop off because people were not using the voice assistant. And we were like, what is happening? We have this cool voice assistant in the car, but no one is using it. And what's happening? And digging deeper, we found that the user did not know what the assistant is capable of doing. There is no way. It's a black box. Like, you're telling me, how can I help you? What if I tell you, like, get me a car or take me here? I don't know what you are able to do. So it's like just trial and error. Some people did not even want to do that guesswork, so they just gave up. That's when we went back and thought about how do we design the menu hierarchy. Now think about this dialogue. How can I help you? Or hello, not how can I help you, but think about it like, hello, I'm your assistant in the car. I can play music for you, or I can take you to a specific location, or I can order flowers for you. What do you want me to do? I have a hierarchy. Now I know that these are the things the assistant is capable of doing, right? So now I have more chances of selecting those, or the assistant can say, like, or you can ask me to tell you more. So you have to think about those kind of things. There may be places, not just during the intros or initial interactions, that there may be menu hierarchy. There may be menu hierarchy which may be there in future as well. Like ordering pizza, like I found a couple of pizzas. I found a cheese pizza. I found I don't know the pizza names, but some different sorts of pizza, like which one do you want, or it has these toppings. So there will be situations in the dialogues or conversation where you may have to think about it from the aspect of converting the menu into a more hierarchical format. So depending on the different use cases, there may be different kind of dialogues which you may have to think about. Then there is mixed initiative. So mixed initiative is like, you are collecting information and you have to collect it seamlessly. For example, taking the pizza. I want to order a pizza. Okay, you want to order a pizza, but which one? Like, is it small? Is it medium? Is it large? The user can give you a lot of information at once. The user can say, I want a large pizza with jalapeno, pineapple, tomatoes, peppers, blah, 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 right? the user has given you so much information. Now you may have to go back and reconfirm with the user, like, okay, did I hear you correctly? Did you mention this? So there's those kind of things. So the mixed initiative would have a form filling, but would also have like reconfirming the information in a format which doesn't frustrate the user, because you don't want the assistant to sound dumb. And many times it happens that, these voice assistants, they sound dumb and we're like, this assistant is so stupid. So and it directly impacts the brand, because it's tied to the brand. Your voice assistant, and I keep saying this thing, like, your voice assistant is your brand ambassador, or your voice application is your brand ambassador. Even if you interact with the IVR system and when they act stupid, we tie it to, like, okay, this banks or this application or this business, they have this stupid IVR, right? So the brand name is impacted, and that is why it is important for us to think about the copywriting as much as we think about the interactions. So there are a couple of different pieces to a conversation or a VUI design. We have a statement, we have a prompt, we have a seek. How do you start the conversation? So statements are basically like one-liner, how can I help you? Or I can do XYZ for you, how can I help you? That is a statement, right? The prompt is where the conversation is happening, right? There's more happening, like you are collecting more information from the user, giving more information, and there is a conversation which is happening. Now there is a seek, which is like from one request to the other, how do you seamlessly transition? Then there may be different states where the user is completely silent, or you are in the listening mode. The system is trying to process, because it's not a human on the other side, it's a machine. So there is some processing, there is some lag, and all of that happening. So we need to think about the state as well, but also branching. If the user said, what is the weather in Seattle? And now from there it is like, okay, do you have any availability for tickets or anything like that? You completely transition from weather to tickets. How do I converse with you, or how do I branch out in a systematic manner? Then there is local intent and global intent. So local intent basically is intent within what the user has asked, like, what is the weather in Seattle? How about Michigan? Or how about California? Something of that sort. The global intent is the top level, where the assistant is able to help you with the different kind of things, like, I can help you with playing music, I can help you with weather, I can help you with ordering flowers, right? So that is the global intent. So anytime during a conversation, the user can say, like, okay, I want to order flowers, which means they are saying, take me back, or help, or something of that sort. So there are those kind of things. Then there's interjection, always like, you have some other conversation you're trying to inject, or there's fallback. There will be a lot of failures, misrecognition, no recognition, disambiguation throughout the conversation, which you have to think about. So let's look at some example, right? So this is the invocation phrase, which is basically like, hey Alexa, or something of that sort. So where the user is talking to the bank assistant, initiating, or maybe it is an assistant, so you are calling the invocation phrase, which is the wake up word. Then the machine is like, welcome back. Here it's just a statement, it is not saying anything else, right? Welcome back. That is the statement. Now what can I help you with? Pay bill or check your balance. That is the prompt, where you are collecting more information from the user. Now the user said, check my balance. That is the user input. Now the system is giving you a response, not expecting any other action on your behalf or any other response from you, which is the balance is X dollars. That is the statement again. Now let's look at this one, where the system is saying, you are about to pay 145 bill to Comcast. Do you want to proceed? Now the user said, will you marry me? Now that is an intent which is not expected, because the machine is actually expecting a response related to what you have asked. The intent in this case is paying the bill, right? But when the system says, will you marry me? What should be the fallback response? So the machine will say, like, sorry, I did not understand. Do you want to pay the bill? Or yes or no, something of that sort, right? Now, the other one is again, here instead, so you can either think about the dialogue strategy as like, yeah, I would just have a fallback, and every time there is like an intent which is not part of the conversation, or it is outside of the intent, unexpected intent, I will have a fallback response which will be, sorry, I did not get that. That is what Alexa does all the time, right? Sorry, I did not get that. Sorry, I did not get that. Or you can think about it as an interjection, right? And think about like, okay, so if you see the response here, the machine says, let me check your balance account. I don't think you could entertain my expensive lifestyle. So it is trying to be a little bit more sarcastic instead of just saying, sorry, I did not get that, right? And then from there, seeing it back to where we want them. So let's get back to paying the bill now. Something of that sort. So it's very interesting in the conversation design, like how the conversation could go into any direction. How do you bring back? What strategy do you use? Do you use a fallback strategy, or do you use a seek strategy with the interjection? So there's all of these different kind of things which we have to be thinking about in the VUI design. Now, there is this cool diagram which I found, which is interesting and talks about all the different things. I'm not going to go through all of the details, but basically it tells you about like, okay, if you want to get the detailed information, how do you get that information? Or if there is a reference, like provide the queries, like what's going on. If the user has asked you about something, how do you do that? Like how is there you are conversing? So there are different pieces, as you can see here. There's structured audio, which is like the ear cons, which we'll talk about as well. And then how do you give the information to the user, give the right information to the user, collect the right information, and all of that. It's very important. I'm not covering the conversation design principles here in detail, but there are a lot of different kind of maxims of conversation which we actually leverage when we are designing the conversations, and that is probably a topic by itself to talk about sometime in future. Now, the second part, which we were talking about, is the system response design itself. So what is the system response design? So all the things we are talking about is a dialogue strategy. Like, okay, if the user asks this is how the interaction should work. So the dialogue strategy focuses more on how do you want the interaction design to be. The system response design is where the copywriting comes into play. And you have to think about, you have a system which can do 10 different things. And how do you want it to sound? How do you want it to look and feel? You know, there's visual aspect, like with the meta-human or multimodality, right? Or there may be just a voice assistant, like a speaker. How do you want the speaker to look? It can look just like a standard speaker, or it can look much more than that. It may have a personality, right, from how the aesthetics are. So that is also another thing, which is something we have to think about. Then the structured audio, like how do we provide the structural audio information? So for example, so when you are adding something to the cart, or when you are selecting something, you have affordances which tells you like, I've added this. It tells you how many product has been added to the cart. If there is an error, if you delete something in the GUI, you are able to see like, okay, I've deleted something, or I've added this thing. Is this what you wanted? Or we have those kind of affordances. We have those kind of feedbacks which we give to the user. How does the feedback loop work in a voice interface where there is limited modalities? For example, Alexa or smart speakers like Alexa, right? Now, how will the user know that the system is processing what I said? Or how will the user know that the assistant has understood? So if you look at the initial versions of Alexa, even now they have, but people can turn it on and off. They used to have a beep or a chime, which would tell the user like, ting, please say a command. So now I'm ready to listen to you. So those beeps and chimes are basically called ear cons. And we have heard ear cons even in a lot of different scenarios and contexts. Our laptop, every time you delete something, or every time you open an app or something, if you have your audios turned on, you would hear some sort of sounds. Those are all different kind of ear cons giving you feedback of the action. The same concept is adopted and used in voice user interface as well, where you have to give user some sort of feedback in an audio format, right? And that's what the structured audio does. Like for errors or confirmations or any sort of things where you might have to give users some more affordance, that's what you would use, a structured audio. Whereas for the persona, it's the look of the template itself, or the different kind of wiggly waves you want to show, or the blue light rings on the Alexa. That's all part of the personality. And also the copy itself, like how do you design the copy. So there's a lot of things on the persona side. I would not cover everything, but high level, I wanted to say there are a couple of steps you have to think about. Think about the system persona, and it's very important for us to think about the system persona or the persona itself, because imagine that I used to work for Ford, and 30 different kind of use cases which we were able to support. Now there are 30 different people or teams working on designing those experiences. The copy would completely sound different. We don't want that. We want assistant to sound like one assistant. Like if you talk to Alexa, regardless, it sounds the same. Or you talk to Google, it sounds the same. That is where defining a persona, it's like a style guide, but more so like you're defining how do you want your persona to be. It's like a framework which will help you create a brand ambassador. It will help you create the right tone of the voice and right modalities and experiences and everything, visual, copy, all the things. Here is a very, very high level example of how the persona is. It may have a name. That is the name which will become the invocation name. How do you want the assistant to sound? The tonality is not just for the copy. Like, how do you want the copy to be? Do you want it to be funny, serious, irrelevant? How do you want it, right? But also, when you are doing the synthetic voice tuning, it has to also sound like that, because when the bots speak, the text-to-speech system speak, it may sound very robotic otherwise. So you have to think about those. Then you also have to, like, how do you want to portray this thing? Like, if you talk to people, they would say, like, Alexa is sassy, right? So the personality, or how do you want it? Again, gender, what do you want it, and how does it speak, and stuff like that. So we create our user personas to think about the user, their needs and goal. The system personas are created in a format something similar. This helps us design, like, okay, this is the tone I want to use. So it becomes the style guide for writing the copies. And very quickly, I will talk about the VUI Design Principles, which brings all of the things we spoke about together. One thing is you have to give your VUI a personality so that you can make it more structured, and it has a brand and tone and voice. Otherwise, it will feel like, multiple people are designing and writing the copy themselves and maybe disconnected, and that is not what we want. The second thing is move the conversation forward. Sometimes the user will be completely silent. Like, for example, if I talk to my son and I would ask him, how was your day at school? He would say, good. He kills the conversation. That will happen many times in conversations with the bots, or thinking about the conversation. Many people are extrovert. They will give you a lot of information at once. Many people will give you very little information, and they may say, like, okay, good. How do you continue the conversation? They just said that. Now you have to find a way. So you need to make sure you are moving the conversation forward until the point where the goal has been achieved, whatever the goal might have been. You have to keep it simple and you have to do it well. That means you have to be very specific. You don't have to, go all over the place. So you have to think about making it the simplest experience. In the past, voice assistants were not very sophisticated. So in the voice, we would have we would ask the user, like, please tell me where you want to go. And the user would say, like, I want to go to 995 Continental Avenue, Canton, blah, blah, blah. And it would say, like, sorry, I did not understand. And then it would say, like, tell me the state first, then tell me the city, then tell me your street address, and all of that, which was very frustrating. Or it would expect the user to speak in a certain format. Like, we don't want all of those things. We have to make sure the system understands what the user is saying. So it has to be very simple. The conversation has to be as quickly as possible, get them to the goal and get it done. That is why they are using voice. And leverage the context wherever possible. If you have information about the existing context, use it. So for example, recently I asked Google Assistant, I told Google Assistant, hey Google, remember this location for me. I will ask you about this later. And Google was like, fine. And then just the next, immediately after that, I asked Google, like, what did you ask you to remember? And Google was like, this location. That's how the intelligence is. That's the only level of intelligence some of the assistants would have if they are not able to leverage the context. Had Google understood the context of what I said, it would have known I'm talking about my current location, right? And given me like, okay, you meant so you said California or something. So these assistants do not have intelligence of their own. We designers need to make sure we are injecting those through however we are designing the interactions. Then we have to direct the user through word order and stress. So what is important? What is, you can do 10 different things. Do you want to give all of that information to the user first? If I said find me nearby Starbucks, there are tons of Starbucks. Every mile and a half there is a Starbucks near my house. Does that mean I'll give you all of that information? Can I think about like which direction is the user going? Should I give in that direction? And which is the closest? Should I give about that? Instead of giving all the 10, let me give them the most relevant or in the order which is more important to them. Why would someone want to go the other side when they are along the route? So thinking about those kind of things is also very important when designing. Now, don't teach the users the command. Let them speak intuitively. Going back to the example I was saying in the car, these voice assistants, the navigation system used to be so complicated. Even they used to tell the users like, say play music if you want to listen to music, or say play artist name. But that's not how people speak. I can completely come and say like, I'm in the mood to listen to some hip hop, right? And the system would say, I'm sorry, I did not get, please say music. So it's very frustrating. You don't want those kind of things in your experience. So you need to make sure that you're not teaching user the command. They know how to speak. Learn how they speak and then design for that. So as a designer, you may have to think about those kind of things as well in your interactions. For example, the user can say, what is the weather in Seattle? Or they can say, will it rain? Or do I need an umbrella? It means the same thing in their mind. How will the system understand it? That is where you have to think about and bring everything together. Then accommodate errors. People will make lot of errors all through. Like we just saw the example in between, they were saying something which was completely out of the context, like, will you marry me? How do you bring them back? Or there may be that the system did not understand what you said because the accent was not recognized. How do you tell the user? I have so in my phone, my son is 11 now, so of course all the parents number is saved, and it's like Logan's mom, Carson's mom, Jason's mom. And so now when I tell my assistant that call mom, it would be like, which mom should I call? I found 10 different moms in your contact list. Disambiguation. There will be situations like that where it understood what you said partially, is not 100% confident what you meant. How do you accommodate? So there may be those kind of different scenarios to be thinking about. And design for everyone, everywhere, irrespective of age, ability, situation, accent, or their abilities, or whatever it may be. We have to design bringing the same usability principle. When we talk about universal design, the same thing we should be doing here. We should be designing for everyone, everywhere. There may be people who have speech disorders, or there may be people who cannot see, they can just speak. There may be people who cannot hear, they can just see. There may be different kind of people. How do you design so that everyone is able to use it in the same manner? And then I would just like to end it by saying here are a couple of tools for prototyping and designing and development of voice. Adobe XD is cool if you just want to do initial exploration and designing. Many people still use Excel sheets. There's Fable. VoiceFlow is more on the development side, where you can design the voice interactions but also deploy it into the devices. And then you have Dialogflow like tools as well. And with that, I'm open to any questions. And I know that was a lot of information.
It was, Shamla, but I have to say, I couldn't write fast enough, but I made a note to actually put this on my syllabus as a must watch video. So as soon as this goes on uxpa.org, my students will be downloading it. I can check the questions in the Q&A and see. No, there's no open questions there. Sometimes folks are a little reticent to speak up, and that's okay. If no one has anything that they want to put in the chat or in the Q&A, then I will remind everyone that the video will be up and you can watch it again and again until you get all of the finer points. There are some things I'm going to have to follow up with. I might have to email you later, Shamla. I also want to remind everybody that this webinar, as well as all of our webinars, are available on the uxpa.org website. As well, you should check the website for upcoming webinars and also short courses. I can see already that there's enough material here that we may have to get you back, Shamla, for a short course at some point in the future when your schedule clears out a bit. I know you're juggling multiple launches in the coming weeks.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So we're really, really so grateful and thankful for you to have made time for us and for this community when you have so many other things pressing for your time. And I know that you have a bit of a summer cold as well. So on behalf of the User Experience Professional Organization International and all of the attendees today, I want to say thank you so much.